Welcome to Random But Memorable, a podcast from 1Password. I'm Sarah, one of the founders at 1Password.
I'm Roo, head of password manager development.
I'm Matt Davey, 1Password's chief experience officer.
I'm Anna, the producer behind the show.
And we're the hosts behind Random But Memorable. Together, we offer up bi-weekly security advice, interview special guests from the cybersecurity community, and round up the latest in security news with Watchtower Weekly. We may even play a silly security game or two. So sit back and enjoy the show.
How was your week off, Roo?
Oh my gosh. It was great. It was great. It was very full.
Do you need a holiday from your holiday?
I kind of do. Yeah, which I know sounds really cliche, but like we are now in this habit when we go on vacation that it's just chock full of tons and tons of stuff. And we still have nap time during the day, which is great, but
you have a nap time?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
On vacation, nap time, especially the types of vacations that we take now, it's required. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. That's a life hack right there.
We went up to Bar Harbor, Maine, which is where Carrie and I honeymooned. That was 18 years ago that we first went, and just did a ton of stuff. Bar Harbor is right next to Acadia National Park, which is a beautiful national park. Lots of great coastline, and there's a mountain, and lots of lobster and just great food overall. I bought a blueberry pie about midway through the week that we took to the top of the mountain for sunset, which was awesome. But then nobody else ate the pie for the rest of the week. So I literally was just like, I would just go and like pull out the pie and have a couple of bites and be like, anybody want some pie? And everyone else was like, that pie is 4 days old. No, we don't want your old blueberry pie. And it was great. It was great every single bite.
Did you just take a fork to it and hold the whole thing?
I just kept a fork in the box. Yeah, and would just open it up and have some.
I have a very Friends Joey moment, like, you
you
just got it ready to go in your shirt pocket, just ready to sit down and have a little bit of pie.
Very, very similar.
Because you never know.
You never know. Yep.
Roo doesn't share food.
I tried.
Yeah.
I did have Achel text me while I was on PTO, and I'm very like, don't reach out unless you absolutely need to reach out. Thank you so much, though.
Yeah.
I'm going to get back to my blueberry pie.
Oh I got to get back to this pie. Sorry. Holy. Anyway, but that's okay. It was great. And now I'm back, and I'm happy to be back.
Nice. I love that.
Very good.
Okay, let's get into the show, because joining us later on for today's episode is Alan Watkins. Alan has written an incredibly helpful book, which is essentially a guide on how to create a small business cybersecurity program. So for anyone listening who works for a small startup or owns their own small business, it's hopefully a helpful discussion filled with lots of tips on how to get set up for the security side of things. But before we get into that, I think we should kick off with our news segment, From the Vault.
Yes, this is the first segment of our show where we're going to highlight something that's been happening in the last couple of weeks, whether that's here at 1Password or in our personal lives. And so I think this is a good spot to kick off with the back to school stuff, because I know here at 1Password we've been doing a bunch of back to school campaigns. So not to exclude our folks down Australia way and things like that, but it's back to school season here for me. So we've got some tips and all those sorts of tricks and back to school packing lists and all those sorts of things you can do to help get yourself ready to go back to school, not just from, buying your Crayola markers and making sure you've got a box of Kleenex for the classroom, but making sure you're getting things set up with the right password habits as you go forward. So I have to pack up Abby. She's moving back out of the house again on the weekend. I have no idea how quickly that summer went by. It just feels like she just got home and now I've got to take her back.
Wow. Gosh.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yep.
Yeah, both kids are moving into new schools this year. So yesterday, actually, we were sat down and we made sure that Sophia's locker combination went into the vault and that Sawyer's locker combination went into the vault, so that if we ever need to get into their lockers for some reason, we can do so. And it was funny because Sophia was like, I've already got it memorized. We don't need to save it. I go, yeah, we do. Like, just in case I need to get in there somehow. Like, we just put it in there.
Mm-hmm.
So we did. And it's good. The thing I like about 1Password is that, like, it really is our go-to for, like, every single little piece of information that has some security angle to it. It just goes in there. Like, okay, when we drove up to our trip to Bar Harbor, I pulled an old padlock out of the junk drawer so that I could lock up the bikes. And I haven't used that padlock in years, but the combination for it was in 1Password. So I was able to look it up and be like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what
That's
this is.
handy.
And then use the padlock to lock up the bikes because we brought the bikes on the back of the car. It's like every little, it's that place where you're like, I can find this thing. Or like Carrie's license plate number, which I never remember, but when you go to places that sometimes they'll ask for it for the parking pass, I just have that in one password. I just look it up and it's right there and okay, great. I look at the picture of it and write it down.
Nice.
Every little thing is in there, and it makes such a big difference when you just think of it as the storage place for stuff like this.
Oh, it's freeing up that brain space. I don't ever have to think about, 2 spins to the right, 15 spin to the left. Like, you don't have to think about it. And I think that's where, high school's a lot for kids. Like, there's a lot of things to think about. And so if you can kind of have that backup memory space, you should have it.
Yep.
Definitely.
100%. All right, now that we've wrapped up from the vault, we can move on over to Watchtower Weekly. This is where we run down some of the latest sensationalist headlines or dissect some security news in more detail. So to kick off Watchtower today, we have another follow-up story. This one is an update to the National Public Data Breach, which just appears to be getting worse by the day because, according to the LA Times and Krebs on Security, hackers may have stolen every American's social security number. A hacking group named US DoD recently claimed to have stolen personal records of 2.9 billion, with a B, people from background check company National Public Data, which offers personal information to employers, private investigators, staffing agencies, and others. The group offered to sell the data in a hacking forum, which included records from the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom for $3.5 million. It has now come to light that this data includes social security numbers of nearly every American and could power a raft of identity theft, fraud, and other crimes. Teresa Murray, Consumer Watchdog Director for the U.S. Public Interest Research Group, said, quote, if this, in fact, is pretty much the whole dossier in all of us, it certainly is much more concerning than prior breaches. And if people weren't taking precautions in the past, which they should have been doing, this should be a 5-alarm wake-up call for them. The leak purports to provide much of the information that banks, insurance companies, and service providers seek when creating accounts and when granting a request to change the password on an existing account. A few key pieces appeared to be missing from the hacker's haul. One is email addresses, which many people use to log on to services. Another is driver's license or passport photos, which some governmental agencies rely on to verify identities. Still, bad actors can do all kinds of things with the leaked information, the most worrisome probably being to try to take over someone's accounts, including those associated with their bank, investments, insurance policies, and email. With your name, social security number, date of birth, and mailing address, a fraudster could create fake accounts into your name or try to talk someone into resetting the password on one of your existing accounts. It's also possible that criminals could use information from previous data breaches to add email addresses to that data from the National Public Data leak. Armed with all of that, Murray said, you can cause all sorts of chaos, commit all kinds of crimes, and steal all kinds of money. Not only that, but this breach appears to get even worse, as Brian Krebs from Krebs on Security published a post reporting that National Public Data published its own passwords. Krebs recently learned that another NPD data broker, which shares access to the same consumer records, inadvertently published the passwords to its back-end database in a file that was freely available from its homepage until August 19th. The background search service recordscheck.net was hosting an archive that included the usernames and password for the site's administrator. The archive included the source code and plain text usernames and passwords for different components of recordscheck.net, which is visually similar to nationalpublicdata.com and features identical login pages. The exposed archive, which was named members.zip, indicates records check users were all initially assigned the same 6-character password and instructed to change it, but many did not.
Oof.
If you suspect that your social security number or other important identifying information about you has been leaked, experts say you should put a freeze on your credit files at the 3 major credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. You can do this for free, and it will prevent criminals from taking out loans, signing up for credit cards, and opening financial accounts under your name. You'll just need to remember to lift the freeze temporarily if you are obtaining or applying for something that requires a credit check. You can also sign up for a service, like Have I Been Pwned, that monitors your accounts on the dark web to guard against identity theft, typically for a fee. If your data is exposed in a breach, you may get notified. As important as these steps are to stop people from opening new accounts in your name, they aren't much help protecting your existing accounts. Oddly enough, those accounts are especially vulnerable to identity thieves if you haven't signed up for online access to them, Murray said, because it's easier for thieves to create a login and password while pretending to be you than it is for them to crack your existing login and password. This is rough. This is really rough.
Yikes.
Really rough.
Have you checked that you've been caught up in this, Roo?
I mean, I'm just assuming that I have at this point.
Yeah.
I do need to check something, though, because prior to all of this happening, I had looked into putting a credit freeze on, and I was not able to do so for free. with at least 2 of those agencies. So it's possible that I was doing something wrong, but I need to get back to that and sort of figure that one out. I'm honestly less concerned about new accounts as much as I am existing accounts.
That's interesting they would charge for you to put a freeze on something.
I agree, yes.
I don't know if I like that.
Yeah.
That would be nice for 1Password to have that as a service. I could just click a button and say, like, can you freeze my credit? Like, can you create accounts at all these places and freeze my shit? And just, I just need someone to make all this stuff easy for me.
I know.
I don't want to have to go places.
Yep.
There we go, Sarah. Spin up a ticket.
Yeah.
I was going to say, is the hackathon just ended? Could we add
that as a new feature.
add that to the next hackathon, please?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. All right. Let's jump over to PIRG.org that reports that car companies are sneakily selling your driving data. A new investigation found that GM, Honda, Kia, Subaru, Hyundai, and Mitsubishi are tracking drivers' data on everything from when they drive to how hard they hit their brakes. You would think that they're guarding that data and only using it to make their cars safer, but sadly that's not the case. Right now, some of the biggest car companies are tracking millions of drivers' data and sneakily selling it to third-party brokers, and the consequences seen from this so far are pretty scary. It's been reported that insurance companies are jacking up rates with no explanation. Cars and their connected apps know a lot about their drivers. They know how far you go, the start and end time of your trips, how hard you brake, how quickly you accelerate, and they may be tracking that information without your knowledge. One data broker has detailed driving data on more than 10 million drivers. Overnight, and without explanation, one of these drivers found that his insurance had spiked by 21% because GM had sold his driving data to a third-party broker, which compiled 130 pages of his driving behavior and sold it to his insurance company. After automakers collect the data, third-party brokers sell that data to other companies, in this case insurance companies, that use it against consumers without them knowing it. The consequences could span far beyond insurance rates, though. With every secret handoff from data broker to buyer, we're likely more at risk for data breaches, identity theft, or targeted scams. Not only that, sadly, much of the data collecting technology that many vehicles use can't be opted out of. Most new cars today will have some type of location tracking technology included. But where possible, if you own a car with this kind of technology, it might be worth checking its privacy settings and see if there are opt-out settings you can select. This one is new for me because I had not considered having to opt out of tracking in my vehicle. That's not great.
I don't feel good that they might know how lazy I am and that I take my car for like a 5-minute drive down the road when I should have really just walked.
Yeah, it's my thing now. Stop looking at me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's mine. Whatever I do with it is mine. Go away. Yeah. Now, I have heard the opposite. Like, we have our friends, their teenager was a teenager first with the driver's license, and they had a tracker put in the car with the insurance company where, depending on how she was driving, that would give them better insurance rates. So if you had the tracker, you consented to it, the insurance company would use that data and then bill you based on what they saw your driving habits. And so totally an opt-in thing there, and it's not something new, but the idea that you wouldn't even necessarily know that all of your information is there. And like, how do you know who's driving the car? Is it me versus David? Because we are very different drivers. Like, I don't know if it's the same at your house, but you know, very different drivers. So how does the company, like, I don't know, how do you figure all that out? I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Turn it off.
We have had one of those devices that provided by the insurance company that we put in the car that we opt into for that exact reason. And like, it has saved us up to 20% on our car insurance, which has been great because we're generally safe drivers who don't speed or brake too hard or all those things. But I don't want the vehicles to be tracking us privately. Like, that sucks.
Yeah, it's interesting that this data can actually work in your favour. So if you're a really safe driver, it's going to drive down the insurance premium.
Yeah. But
then on the flip side of that, the data can work against you and you never know where it's going to end up and who it's going to be in the hands of.
Yeah, not great and kind of creepy. I just... Ugh.
Yeah.
Why do we got to be creepy? I don't like it. Mm-hmm. All right. The last one comes to us from techradar.com. You really need to stop using work laptops for personal use, and here's why. New research has revealed an overwhelming majority, 90% of workers use their company-provided laptops for personal activities, potentially posing a serious cybersecurity risk. The study by ESET highlighted that a substantial portion of employees also engage in risky activities using their business hardware, including viewing adult content, gambling, accessing the dark web, and streaming sports illegally. Oh my gosh.
How is that the same thing? How is watching football on the thing the same as watching porn?
I don't know.
The first three you had me, I'm like, oh yeah, you don't do that on the work machine. And then streaming sports is kind of like, you've got something on in the background.
Yeah.
As long as you're not betting on the sports or something, right? Like,
or you're watching it on your lunch break.
Sorry, I've interrupted the flow.
No, it's okay.
I've interrupted the flow. It's all over now.
ESCT blames the shift to hybrid and remote work on the added strain for security teams, adding companies should consider adding more robust security measures to manage corporate devices remotely while also educating employees. The survey found that 2/3, 63% of respondents, accessed the so-called dark web on their work laptops weekly, with 17% doing so daily. Why? What's on the dark web that you need?
I don't even know how to get to the dark web. I have to Google. How do I find the dark web?
What's out there? Why are you on the dark web?
Is that night mode?
Don't Google it, Sarah. Don't Google it.
That's night mode. I don't know what's going on.
Gosh. Friend of the show, Jake Moore from ESCT, commented on this research saying, quote, "We often hear employees are the weakest security link, and endpoint security may not be the first thought on people's minds, which can cause issues when switching between work and personal devices. However, despite the clear dangers of personal use and the benefits of remote management software, 1 in 3, 36%, would consider their boss viewing their personal activity as a violation of privacy. Moreover, around 1 in 5, 18%, do not have any cybersecurity software on their work devices," which is a different problem. So when I started here at 1Password, like over a decade ago, it was like Shiner literally asked me, he's like, "Do you have a laptop you can use?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Great, you're all set." And then now we're at the stage of company where everyone has company provided devices. And as soon as I was provided a company provided device, I stopped using it for both work and personal. I used to have, like, my work computer was my personal computer, and it was signed into all of my personal stuff. When I got a work-owned computer that had management software on it and stuff, like IT management software on it, I created a hard line between work and personal, and I don't have any personal stuff on my work computer at all.
I just received my very first work device.
Oh, wow.
Like, I've always just brought my own computer and had my own machine. And just, and they're like, "You really need to use a work," and I'm like, fine. So I'm literally just setting all of that up. But I very much did the same thing. Like, I'm using a Mac, so you have to have Apple ID. And I'm like, well, I'm not signing in with my Apple ID. Like, no. Mm-hmm. So I made a new Apple ID. I used a different email address I created because that's my work computer now. And like,
right.
That's not my toy. It's not my device. It's not like, in that other story where this is my car. I bought it. It's mine. Give it to me. I'm going to drive it however I want. This is a rental car from, wherever I'm renting it. I'm expecting all of the data. I'm expecting all of the mileage, all of it to be recorded and kept and accessible if needed to, because it's a company that needs to make sure nobody's doing stuff they're not supposed to. So 90% of people are doing stuff they shouldn't be on their work machines, but 36% of them are like, "Oh, no, you can't possibly see this. It's private." Like, it's not your computer. Why would it be private? Like, that's mind-blowing to me.
Exactly. It's a story I always remember from Shiner back before he worked at 1Password. He had a computer that they provided, and he goes, every time I opened it up, there was a big warning on the screen, like before I could log in, that says, "All of your interactions on this computer are monitored. Please click accept to acknowledge this fact." And like, he had to do that before he could start using the computer. He goes, it put me in the mindset that, like, this is not mine. This is not my space. This is the company space.
Yeah.
And people don't have that same view of things today, especially with the hybrid environment that we're in now with all the remote work.
Yeah, I feel like this is becoming more of a reoccurring theme, that we need to really try to keep these two digital lives of work and personal use separate, because we interviewed Troy Hunt actually coming up on the podcast soon, and he was speaking about how he was surprised at how many work email addresses get caught up in data breaches. So that we all need to make a conscious effort not to sign up to personal services using our work emails. So that's just another kind of aspect of this.
Yeah, that's one of those where I have to go back in time, because I had my Hotmail address and then I had my 1Password email address. I'm not going to use a Hotmail address anymore. Like, my Hotmail's not even in my married name. Like, it's that old. So I've signed up for services because, I've been doing 1Password stuff now for 19 years. So I've signed up for things for that before I had like an adult personal email. So now I've got all these old accounts where I have to go back and like do some logging in and changing things because I need to make sure that I'm using my personal email because it's a good idea to make sure you're doing it right.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's a good lead-in to our guest for today's episode. So let's move on, and we'll hear from Alan Watkins. I think this is a really valuable interview with tons of tips and advice for small business owners on not just how to create a cybersecurity program, but how small businesses can think about cybersecurity, why they should care, what's at stake if privacy and security is more of an afterthought. It was a really good conversation with Alan, and I think we can probably just drop it in here. With me today for our interview segment of the show is a guest specially requested from one of our hosts, Matt, who's very eager to get him on the show. Today, I am joined by Alan Watkins. Alan is a professor for the Cybersecurity Master's Degree Program at National University. He has over 25 years of experience in the field of cybersecurity, along with 10 years in emergency management and 12 years in law enforcement. In 2020, Alan was contracted to create a cybercrime prevention certificate program for the InfraGard National Members Alliance. Not only that, he is the author of Creating a Small Business Cybersecurity Program, a non-technical guide for small business owners. The second edition of this book, published in January of 2023, includes version 8 of the CIS Controls, a set of security safeguards for which he is an ambassador. Alan, I'm excited to find out more about your small business guide today and learn all about CIS Controls and what we all might be able to take away from them. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Roo. It's a pleasure being here, and I'm hoping we get some good information out to your listeners.
Yeah, for sure. Can you start by talking a little bit about your journey into cybersecurity and what led you to become a professor for the Cybersecurity Master's Degree Program at National University?
Sure. And those are two different paths, actually. Beginning my journey into cybersecurity started in 1998. There's a project I was working for the city of San Diego, and your audience might not even know this project firsthand. It's probably from stories. But it was the Y2K bug. I was manager, again, for the wastewater department at the city, and I was put in charge of making sure all the systems worked. They all got corrected. And because wastewater is a national infrastructure item, I got in contact with the national FBI office that was coordinating those things. So that took me into the cybersecurity realm, even though Y2K wasn't a security issue, it was just a cyber issue. So at that point, I started working with the FBI, and I had various roles at the city after that. And eventually I became the city's IT security manager. Then moving forward a few years to 2010, there were a couple of things that happened that led me to becoming a professor. First, I think I was having lunch with my mom and my brother, and I got a phone call to show up at the mayor's office for a meeting. And I was surprised because I didn't think the mayor knew who I was, but I did. And it was a startup meeting for an organization called Securing Our eCity, which was a regional San Diego effort. It involved over 300 organizations, which included state, local, and federal government. It included universities and colleges and several dozen large companies like IBM and Verizon and Qualcomm. And I think Microsoft was involved at one point. But dozens of small and medium businesses were involved in that. And the goal was to pool resources to help small businesses get cybersecurity going for their business. One of the members from one of the universities that was in that group was Ron Gonzalez from National University. Unfortunately, he passed away earlier this year. He was a good man. But he asked if I would participate on an advisory panel for National University to help them create their first cyber program. And then when I retired from the city of San Diego in October of 2011, he talked me into applying to become a professor, which I did. And then I've been teaching there since about June of 2012. But that's how I got to be a professor.
Yeah, fascinating. So how would you say that your previous experience in cybersecurity and emergency management influenced your approach to cybersecurity and particularly like crisis situations?
So it's a good thing I have that 10 years of experience in emergency management. And actually that was related to IT management within the larger scope of emergency management. So most major cities and actually big businesses have emergency operations plans so that if something's going wrong, they pull the people together that need to be there for the crisis. So planning is the key thing, and having a plan. And in my book, and in also just cybersecurity in general, cyber needs to be part of that emergency plan because so many businesses, government, everybody depends on the technology. So if you don't plan for a cyber event, then you're not really planning for all the potential emergencies that could happen. So there's two main plan documents. One's called the Disaster Recovery Plan, and the other's a Business Continuity Plan. Business continuity helps maintain a minimum level of operations while a crisis is going on. So IT is part of that. You have to have backup servers, backup communications, backup everything, make sure that the business can function. And then the Disaster Recovery Plan is how do you get the business back to normal operations after the event is over? So both of those are key just for normal business operations, but also for the IT aspect of that and the cyber aspect too.
Has your guidance changed in recent years with the ramp up of ransomware attacks as these things are becoming more and more common? And it feels like it's not so much a question of if we're going to need a disaster recovery plan, but rather when we're going to need one.
Well, funny you should mention that. So first of all, that it's a matter of when, not if, has been a statement from IT security for at least more than a decade, because the more people use technology, the more chance they have of being a victim of some sort of cybercrime or cyber attack or something like that. So it is truly a matter of when, not if, something will probably happen. If you don't have a plan ahead of time, like even just having a family emergency plan, what do you do if your house catches on fire? What do you grab? What do you get out with? And I lived in California for a long time. So the wildfires that swept Southern and Northern California and other states too, obviously. But when you have 15 minutes to get things together and leave, what do you take? So in the cyber world or in the business world, what do you need to prepare for and what do you need to have on the side to manage that? The answer to your question, no, I don't think it has changed. For me, the aspect hasn't changed probably in 15 years because emergency management follows the same principles. And it's just a matter of what you need to prepare for.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So the book focuses on cybersecurity programs for small businesses. Why do you think it's important to have a non-technical guide specifically for small business owners?
Well, first, let's define what a small business is. The SBA has a definition that a small business is a company with less than 500 employees. That small business category makes up about 97 to 98% of all businesses in the U.S. by number count, not by number of employees, obviously. So to me, 500 is a rather large number of employees. So my book focuses on businesses with 25 to 50 or maybe 50 to 100 employees. So 50 is sort of my magic number, plus or minus from that. I have worked with a sole proprietorship and I have worked with government agencies that had over 1,000 employees. So I've done that full spectrum. And the larger organizations tend to have more resources, obviously, and they have people that have technical training to help them out. But the small business owners focus on doing their business. With 50 employees or less, it's a matter of time allocation and priority for them to get their product or their service or whatever they do for their customers. So cyber and maybe some other things take a backseat to that primary business focus. And while some of them have a basic knowledge of how computers work and they're familiar with the applications or the systems that they use normally, they're not going to be familiar with the network security and the protocols and the things behind the scenes that cybersecurity is meant to protect, or the configuration of those, like firewalls and things like that. And most people, they know what a firewall is, but ask them to configure it and you get a blank stare.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think that cybersecurity is an afterthought for small business owners, or it just is, you mentioned prioritization. Do you think it's just sort of it falls victim to some ruthless prioritization that these businesses have to undergo?
Yeah. So yes and no, of course, to that question. Some do and some don't have it as an afterthought. I think that difference is decreasing a lot because every day in the news, there's something going on with a cyber attack of some sort and other things that are large scale that hit the news. This makes the small businesses aware, but they're probably thinking, those are the big guys. I didn't get impacted by that. So their false sense of security, actually, because about a decade ago, about 35% of all cyber attacks reported were small businesses about a decade ago. In the last couple of years, it's up to 45% of all global cyber attacks are small businesses.
Wow.
And it's increasing. And the reason is that the crooks have figured out that there's weak points in the small businesses to get in and do damage either to them or someone else. An example is the Target breach in 2013, I think it was. The attack came through one of their service providers, which was a small business. So the attackers didn't attack Target directly initially. They went through a small business vendor of Target to get in the back door, sort of. This sort of thing has been going on a long time. And small businesses, again, once they're hit, then they obviously wake up and they have to do something about it. But I think it's becoming less of an afterthought and it's more of a conscious priority decision.
Yeah. In your experience, like what are some of the biggest cybersecurity challenges that these small businesses face, and how does your book set them up to meet those challenges?
So I'm going to back up a little bit. In the broad spectrum of things, cybersecurity is really a risk management activity. If you think about it, by reducing the potential for an attack or damage to your company's business assets, whether it's information assets or it's trade secrets or whatever the case may be, by having cybersecurity, it reduces the risk level, which is good all around for business. The challenge is twofold, in my opinion. One, getting the small business owner to recognize they need it. And two, and the book points this out, how it's easy to get things started for low cost. I can't say no cost, because even the low cost items, you're going to have to train employees. So there's going to be time and other things that the business has to put in. It might not be a big direct cost, but it would be like training cost. But a lot of the security measures deal with policies and procedures. What can employees do or not do that actually protects the information of the business? So procedurally, it shouldn't cost that much for a business to set up policies and then train the employees on how to follow them. The other aspect of this is not many companies, small businesses anyway, are mandated to have cybersecurity measures. So again, the challenge is getting the small business owner to realize, one, that it's not going to really cost an arm and a leg, and it's not going to divert too much from his business priorities to start implementing basic cyber. We call it cyber hygiene. There's about 10 or 12 basic principles that make up cyber hygiene that they could implement without shelling out, thousands and thousands of dollars, or even having an employee on the staff that is an expert in cyber.
Interesting. Okay. So how does CIS Controls play into all of this? Like, you're an ambassador for CIS Controls. Like, what are these and how do they benefit the small businesses?
So the CIS Controls started out about 20 years ago, and it was the SANS top 20 critical security controls. So they came up with a list originally because they were trying to find a way to tackle what would be the best method for any business to be prepared for a cyber attack. The intent was if someone implemented those 20 controls, they would probably be protected from at least 85 or almost 90% of potential attacks. So the controls are similar to, if you're familiar with ISO certification. So like everybody knows there's like ISO environmental certification. Mm-hmm. So companies can be certified to show that they're environmentally friendly and all that kind of stuff. Well, there are ISO standards for cybersecurity, but those are usually on an international level. And in the US, there is the National Institute for Standards and Technology, or NIST, and they provide the US with standards and guidelines for cyber. The problem is there's over 300 some odd controls in the document that NIST produces for control mechanisms.
Wow.
So CIS came along and said, well, we've got 20 basic controls, but within those 20 controls, they used to be called sub-controls, but now they call them safeguards. So in May of 2021 was when version 8 came out. That's what it reduced to 18. And there are 153 safeguards, again, compared to the 300 some odd or whatever are in the federal government. In addition, the CIS Controls provides pretty detailed descriptions on how you go about implementing things. And they also offer a assessment tool so that a business can assess where they are with cybersecurity and then find out what they need to fill in the gaps. For instance, my book talks about 56 safeguards, which are in implementation group number 1. which are focused really on small businesses. And I give step-by-step instructions on going through and implementing those. Now, I don't tell them how to actually configure their firewall because that would take someone to go on site to their network to actually see what their network looks like, and then you can configure their firewall. But it talks about what kind of settings and things that you want to have.
That's awesome. So, like, if we take something like one of the controls being malware defense or data recovery, within each of those, it's like, here's the safeguards that you can put in place to sort of meet the standards for malware defense. And here's some tools that you can use to assess how you would stack up against malware defense. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yes, it's exactly right. And so basically, I'm going to list off some of the areas or categories that cyber hygiene covers. So user account management. Who gets a user account in the first place? How do you manage that? Who authorizes it? What are they authorized to access within the company's systems? What do you do when they transfer out to another division if it's a bigger company or they leave the company? So that's user account management is one of the big ones. And again, it doesn't need a lot of technical things behind it. It's also called identity and access management because it's supposed to identify who the user is, and then based on the role, that user has access to particular resources. There should be probably a wireless access and remote access policy that dictates who and how, or even if, remote access into the company's network is going to be allowed. Some places do, some don't. It would also cover something like BYOD, that's bring your own device. So whether it's a smartphone, an iPad, a tablet, a laptop of some sort, if you're going to connect a personal device and use it for business purposes, there are a lot of caveats that have to go with that. And managing the business data that is stored on the device. Systems administration security. Who do you have that is managing your systems? Whether it's a third-party contract or an internal employee, you want to make sure they're on the up and up. So you have to audit what they do to make sure they're not like trying to build some backdoor that, if they become a disgruntled employee and leave, the next day, all of a sudden your systems go down because they put in some Trojan or something like that. Software updates and patch management. So this is the operating system. So usually Windows has automated patches. They call it Patch Tuesday. It's usually the first Tuesday of the month. But other software and applications issue patches that are on sort of a routine basis. So you want to make sure that you've automated as much as you can for security patches, but there are certain updates you don't want to have automatically load because they may cause glitches in your system. So you want to test them first and then have them dispersed to the company machines. And third-party access. So we talked a little bit about who comes into your back door. So you have suppliers and vendors. You also might have distributors on the other end of your process that are not part of your company, but that you have interfaces with. So you want to have policies that dictate who and how those interactions take place. And then the last one would be protecting confidential or sensitive information. So probably every business has confidential information, whether it's the employee's records or customer information that needs to be protected. And there's things like encryption and other tools that can be used to help do that.
Where would you recommend that small businesses start with some of these programs? Like, where do they begin?
Yeah, management needs to step up and say, hey, we're going to take cybersecurity seriously, and either come up with a cybersecurity strategy statement that says over the next 3 years or 3 to 5 years, we plan on becoming the most secure widget producer in the Northern American hemisphere, or something like that. Strategy statements are usually sort of vague. Within that strategy is to build a cybersecurity program that contains the policies and procedures that will drive what can and can't be done. And then once that's set, the actual implementation sequence, it can vary. It depends on what might be a high priority. Doing the assessment will tell you where you have gaps that need to be filled. And what I would do is then prioritize those gaps, which is the one that's most critical, that would do the most damage to the organization if something happened, and fix that. And so it's basically damage control from the worst to the least.
With small businesses, we're talking small budgets. We're talking limited budgets. What do you think are some of the more cost-effective cybersecurity measures that these folks can put in place?
So one other area that I didn't really mention for training employees is not just following policies and procedures, but how can they recognize when there might be a potential cyber attack occurring? What's going on with their computer, what's going on with files, how to recognize there's several forms of social engineering. So phishing emails, which try and trap you into providing information or clicking on a link that you shouldn't click on, and the link downloads malware. So getting to the point of having awareness, so following the rules, but having an awareness of, if you see something, say something, is sort of what it boils down to. And even if it's not something that's really bad, at least they're trying. And hopefully, depending on who they're reporting it to, we'll follow up with them and say, oh, thanks for that report. It turns out that it was an off-cycle update of some software that we forgot to notify the employees that we were going to do. So it glitched a system or something. Or the other alternative is, thanks for letting us know that same attack has been occurring, across the country in different businesses. And, we stopped it in time. Kudos. The CIOs or the CEO is going to give you an award of some sort for saving the company. And actually it brings up incentives. So some companies do incentivize employees for making reports of things. So if it turns out to be a valid something or report it that leads to a definite attack that can be thwarted, then, potentially there's an incentive reward for that.
It's really interesting to hear how much of this is sort of training and, you said, policies and procedures.
Yeah.
In the past, we've interviewed some folks who have done like physical penetration testing, and their assessment is like, look, like, yes, sure, like you should have antivirus and yes, have your firewall set up and malware protection and stuff like that. But if you aren't training the person who is running the reception desk to not let me into the building, it doesn't matter what you do. As soon as I get physical access to that machine, it's game over. And so, like,
right,
it's fascinating to sort of hear you double down on that same message of like, there are some inexpensive things that you can do that will significantly up your cybersecurity game.
Yeah. So social engineering is probably one of the main mechanisms for cyber criminals to get a foothold in a company. And social engineering has been around for eons. When man first, wanted something that someone else had, they would use trickery and deceit or threats to go and get that something. So now all we've done is automate it. But there's a lot of physical things that still happen. So you've maybe heard of dumpster diving. Cyber crooks will go into the trash cans of big corporations looking for bits and pieces of information. And it could be that they go into personal trash cans too, to look for your bank records, gas and electric, telephone, any utility bills, trying to get information about you and your account or accounts. They put a profile together of their victim so that when they go in and talk to that person, they can talk intelligently about, I'm calling from the gas company and, your account that ends in, the last four digits, which are the last four digits of their account, because guess what? They went in their trash and they found a statement or something like that. So having people be aware of that. The downside is they're really good at some of the things they do.
Yeah.
Another physical attack method is piggybacking. So if you're in a building that has card key access or restricted access, and you're an employee walking in and there's someone waiting by the door with their arm full of, papers and briefcase or whatever the case may be in it. Oh, I can't get to my card key right now. Can you just let me in? And of course most people, oh, sure, I'll let you in. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's another game over situation.
Yep.
We have people that steal utility uniforms or other uniforms for service companies, and they'll put the uniform on, they'll make a fake, ID badge, and they'll go into the company and say, we got a service call to check on XYZ. It could be air conditioning. It could be computer related, but it could be almost any maintenance task. And their whole thing is to get them back inside the locked doors so they can find the computer room and get the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of those. For a while, there was like a viral trend going around where it'd be like, if we just put on a high-vis vest and carry a ladder, we can get in anywhere. And it showed people like going into movie theaters and like all of these things and just being like, they're just letting us walk in. This is incredible. Like we could just go everywhere.
That's right. It is. And so the camouflage of business services, it happens on the phone too. I'm calling from tech support. I got a call from Joe Schmo, who happens to be your boss. And he said I needed to check on something. Can you just connect me through? So there's all sorts of tricks and things. So too many to go into.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. If we have folks listening in now who are either small business owners or work for a small business, do you have any final advice or words of encouragement when it comes to creating a robust cybersecurity program?
I think if I had final advice, it would be, you don't have to buy my book, but you should probably get some sort of resource that talks about how to set up basic cybersecurity measures, whether you call it cyber hygiene or something else, because it truly is a matter of when and not if every business will probably be attacked. The book that I have is in basic business terms. So, of course, I would recommend it. It has templates actually that come with it. So there's a series of 10 policy templates. There's a template for doing a strategy. So all those things we talked about, there's free templates that come with it. My only other comment would be that some businesses ask how long does it take? So it depends on how complex of a program you want to implement. I would say a minimum of 6 to 8 months and a maximum of a year to really get into and through everything. Because some of it you don't want to rush. And even the policy things, you need to have sufficient time to get them incorporated and assimilated into the business culture.
Yeah, and for training, like you need the repetition. You've got to go over this stuff again and again a few times to really, and regularly also, to sort of like get this to be just a part of the way that people are thinking about these situations that they're going to find themselves in.
Training and awareness are two different things in my realm. Training is, here's the formal policies you have to obey. Here's what happens if you don't. So know what the policies and procedures are. Here's a procedure that you have to follow. Awareness is, okay, folks, today we're going to talk about how do you recognize a phishing email? Or today we're going to say, how do you recognize maybe someone who doesn't belong in an area where they're not supposed to be? So awareness is sort of an ongoing process, weekly, monthly. You can put little notes up in the lunchroom or little flyers around the office that say, today we're going to talk about password security. How do you make a secure password?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. If folks wanted to go and learn more about CIS Controls or you or the book, where should they go?
I do have a LinkedIn profile, so you could search for my name, Alan, with one L, Watkins. My publisher have places you can get the book, and that is CISODRG.com. You can search for my book on Amazon.com, or you can go to CIS, which is www.cisecurity.org is actually what it looks like. And then you can get information from them on their controls.
Wonderful. Alan, it's been a joy talking to you today. Thank you so much for making the time.
All right. Thanks. I appreciate it.
That was an amazing interview, Roo. And thank you, Alan, for taking the time to spend some time chatting over all of the good stuff there. So with that, we're going to move on to Ask 1Password, our advice segment where you can ask Roo anything. This is where we answer your questions, whether they be security related or you just need some life advice. This week, we have a question from Roberto, who says, this is where I wish Matt was here because I need the accent. And I have no idea what Roberto is going to sound like, so I don't feel like I can pull off a proper accent. I'm not Matt, so I'll just go with, hello, Roo. It's been a pleasure to contact you for the podcast. I'm getting on in years, and I've been thinking about what happens to my account if I get very sick and can no longer remember my account password, or what happens if I pass, not to be too morbid. But how can I help make sure that my family can still access everything if I'm not there to help, but without giving them access to everything right now? It would be a great relief to get a plan in place for this. Thank you in advance for your help, Roberto.
This is a great question, and it's something that we think about a lot, and we haven't solved it completely yet, but we've recently taken some steps that I think will help quite a bit. So the first thing is we recently introduced recovery keys or recovery codes for your account. So you can actually create a recovery code for your account that's not something that you have to know or remember. It gets generated, and you can print this out, and it's a code that will allow people to get into your account without having to know the secret key or the password. And so I think that that's a good first step, is to get that code generated and get it printed out. The next step from there is to have sort of a break glass in case of, well, in this case, in case of death, with a lawyer, and have them set up in the same way that you would have someone execute on your will. You can include this with that documentation. And so you have a protocol where people can actually get access to your account and recover that account in the event of your death. But prior to then, there's no access for them. And again, this is, as with any sort of will execution type setup, this has to be someone that you trust, and trust above all others. I know that when my wife and I were setting up our will, we had a very short list of people that we said, yes, like this is someone that we'd be willing to give this information to that won't abuse it or make misuse of it, and we'll keep it safe until it's needed. The other thing that you can do is you can actually add someone to your account and have a protocol where they can sign in as a guest, access a shared vault, and it would give them the critical information that they need to give to other people, and make sure that this person has a list of trusted accounts, maybe a time delay before they can action on anything, and just make sure that the information is available to them and is in the right place. We also have a complete guide to estate planning, which, Sarah, I think you authored a good deal of, if I'm remembering correctly.
Definitely not taking any credit on that one.
Okay,
that was
great.
I think a lot of it spun out of I don't know, for some of our listeners, they might remember our box or pot discussions.
Yes, I remember.
And the marble bus that we're going to create, or mystery buried in the forest. So a lot of it came out of that, where it was, what can we do to provide some information? So those are all free resources that folks can access. You don't have to sign up or provide your email to get access to it, but you can just head over to our blog post to see all of that, and always consult a lawyer. But it's just some general tips and advice as to how you can help get things planned out in advance.
Yeah, so I'm sure we'll have the links in the show notes. You can also probably just search for digital estate planning 1Password, and it will probably take you right to our blog post about this. I love this resource that we put together because it's not an ad for 1Password. It doesn't rely on 1Password specifically. These are good practices that anyone, whether they are a 1Password user or not, can make use of. So go check that out. Another good tip here.
Yeah, I recently finally completed my will after putting it off for however many years, but it's just one of those things that you never really want to make the time to do estate planning and things like that. But honestly, when you do, it's kind of a massive relief. And once you've done it, you've got a plan in place, and it kind of doesn't play on your mind as much anymore.
Yep, exactly. 100%.
Okay, so with that, shall we round off our show with some password panic?
Maybe.
Let's do it.
Maybe. It depends.
Maybe.
Can we have the jingle? Actually, not have the jingle though, because from when I listened to the last show that I wasn't on, my headphones are going to die soon, and I don't want them to die while that's dying in my ear.
Okay, I've turned the volume down, so let's hear the jingle.
Here we go.
Password panic. Answer quick, recall the list, and only time will show how the competition in this edition of Password Panic will go.
It really is a good jingle. Sorry.
It really is. So welcome to Password Panic, the fast-paced memory testing trivia game. Here we have to answer a number of general knowledge questions to create one long password. But that's not all. When answering, our hosts must recite every correct answer from the round in order before adding the new answer to the list. As this long list grows, we will begin to create a complex password. So whoever remembers the most correct answers is crowned the winner. So our first question this week is, James Bond also goes by what code number?
Bidoo.
Sarah?
007. Or do I say 007?
Oh, you could say 007. That's
okay,
fine.
007.
Okay. What is the smallest country in the world by land area? Roo.
007. Oh my God. Is it Luxembourg?
It is not. Sarah.
Oh.
Wow, out quickly.
Well then, I know it's not Canberra, because I was going to go 007 Madagascar, but I don't think that's right.
Oh, no.
French
No.
Polynesia?
I'm going to give you both a hint. It's close to Italy, surrounded by Italy.
Oh, jeez. Is it the Vatican?
It is the Vatican.
Oh.
The Vatican's a country?
Yes,
It is.
technically.
Oh.
Technically. Oh. If it weren't for the Vatican, I think I would have gotten it with Luxembourg.
I thought Luxembourg was a part of Germany.
I mean,
is it a separate country?
No, Luxembourg is a small landlocked country.
Oh Lord, we should have a rule: no more geography.
No more
ever.
geography.
No geography.
there's at least two more geography questions just in this round, so.
Oh Lord, if the answer is Reykjavik, I can do it. I won a tournament in a university
Oh my gosh.
playoff, and I knew that answer, but that's it. I'm done.
Can you spell that, Sarah?
No. Congratulations, Roo. You are the winner.
Yay! No, let's keep going. So we've
Okay.
got 007 and Vatican so far.
Vatican City, yes. Number 3. Which movie features 12 jurors who must decide the fate of a teenager accused of murder? Go on, Roo.
007, The Vatican, 12 Angry Men.
Yes, correct. Very good. Next geography question coming up. Which
God.
American city is known as the birthplace of jazz?
Dee-doo.
Go on, Sarah. A reluctant buzzer there.
You can hear the hesitance. 007, The Vatican, 12 Angry Men, and New Orleans?
Yes, very good. Okay, next one. What is the name of the spacecraft that first landed humans on the moon in 1969?
Oh, no.
There's a giant long pause here.
You're American, Roo. I expect better of you.
All right, ba-ding. 007, Vatican. Wait, 12 Angry Men.
Yes. You've got this.
Oh, my God.
Jazz one.
New Orleans, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it Apollo 11?
It is Apollo 11.
Oh, thank God.
Okay, so we keep on going.
Oh, I was going to guess Apollo. I didn't know there was numbers attached to this.
Remember 11, Sarah.
Holy moly.
Remember 11.
Oh, no. Double L, double one.
Number 6. What is the name of the app that helps users identify songs by listening to short samples of music?
Bing.
I love how your buzzer is different every time.
All right, 007, Vatican. Oh, my God. 12 Angry Men,
Yep.
New Orleans, Apollo 11,
Yep.
Shazam.
Yes. I'm
Jeez
impressed.
Louise.
Number 7 we're on now. What is the capital city of Vietnam?
I'm going to go with a Bidoo and just go and see what happens.
Okay.
Oh, go for it, Sarah.
So we're going to go with 007, The Vatican, 12 Angry Men's, New Orleans, Apollo 11, which means we just answered with Roo's Shazam.
Yes.
And I'm going to go with Phuket.
Oh, no.
This is the only place I know in Thailand.
After all that was incorrect, Sarah. I'm very sorry.
That was all I had for Vietnam.
It was another geography question, you see.
All right, here we go.
Okay, Roo, come on. If you get this, you're claiming the win.
Oh, gosh. Oh, man. All right, 007, The Vatican,
Yep.
12 Angry Men,
Yep.
New Orleans, Apollo 11.
Yes.
Wait, was there one more? Or are we on?
Yep.
You one more.
The music one.
Don't help him out.
Oh, Shazam. Yep, thank you.
I need him to win.
Is it Ho Chi Minh City?
No.
God damn, don't laugh at me when I get it wrong. That sucks.
I feel bad because you had so much effort to get there and you're incorrect. But it is Hanoi.
Oh, my gosh.
So-
All right, great.
I feel like we have no winners today. I can't declare anyone a winner.
All my knowledge of Vietnam geography comes from Good Morning Vietnam and Robin Williams. So I think this means you win, Roo, because I got it wrong
Yeah,
first.
maybe. I don't know.
There are no winners in Password Panic.
I think we both lost. Great. I'm so glad that we both lost.
Winners, every one of us.
Are you pleasantly surprised at your memory skills, though? I'm always surprised at your memory skills.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Unless you're secretly, writing them down.
No, for me, it was more how hard those questions were.
Yeah.
That's where I was like, oh, I don't know the answer to this. I don't know the answer to that. Like the movie, I don't know. I would never have known 12 Angry Men. Not at all. So the only chance I had at winning was because you were here.
Helping each other out.
Well, I mean, we both failed at with the Vatican. Like, we both stumbled right at the starting blocks.
I don't even know how you can call yourself Vatican City and then be a country. Wouldn't it? Come on, man. Welcome to my country. There's only one city here.
Murky marketing
Yeah.
there. Murky marketing.
They got to streamline that stuff.
Oh, man. We gotta streamline that stuff.
I mean, they're probably doing all right for tourism and things.
I bet you they are.
Just fine.
Well, that was a neat little show today.
Very tidy.
Yes.
This was great. No Matthew today, but I think that we did just fine without him.
We always do.
Well, love you both.
Love you
Love you
both.
both. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love it if you could subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also leave us a rating or review. It's one of the best ways to support the Random but Memorable podcast, and we always love hearing your feedback. We're also a community-led podcast, so if you have any questions for us, topic requests, or even guests you want to hear from, please send us a message to podcast@onepassword.com. We read all of your comments and look forward to hearing from you. We hope you join us next episode for plenty more random moments in the world of cybersecurity.